Jeremy, great. Thank you so much for joining us on the Plan Trainers podcast today.
Thank you for having me today.
We are super blessed to have you, and we wanted to know what you're grateful for today.
I'm just grateful to be in this position. Just being an athlete, and I having so many ambitions of just kind of trying to be in the NFL and just really wanting to be like that security for my community. And so my long journey actually brought me to the place that I actually want to be, helping people in my community and being a resource. So I'm just grateful to actually be here in this present moment right now.
That's great, and to be here in the moment. And what are you like a tight end for your community or something like that? What position would you give yourself?
I would say I don't really like offense much, but I would say I was either the quarterback or the safety. Some quarterback of the defense, maybe like a linebacker or a safety or the QB. Either one.
Always looking out for the others.
That's right.
Yeah.
You could tell that I don't really remember the positions of football anymore, but that's all right. Everybody will glaze over that, and we'll get a little bit more into the conversation, and people will learn a little bit more about your football career. But before they do, maybe you could bring us through the football career, and then also include your plant-based journey and when it came about and how it came about. We talked about it a couple of weeks ago, and I found it super interesting.
Yeah. So I'm from Opelika, Alabama. If you don't know where Opelika is, it's about 15 minutes from Auburn University. So most people know where that university is. War Eagle, the great rivalry between Alabama and Auburn that we have each year in Alabama. And so I'm from a small town, about 35,000 people at this current moment. Grew up in impoverished, stricken neighborhood, and so sports was kind of like my connection to reality. What I felt like I could do best to get me out of my environment or out of my situation, and ultimately get me to college, and I would go on to play professional football. So I was a three-sport athlete in high school, a two-time state champion in track and field. I was an all-state football player and an all-area basketball player. And so I essentially could have went to college for either one of those sports, but we're in a football state, Alabama. And so football is the way to go here when you talk about trying to really achieve anything. And so I took my talents to North Carolina State University. I was originally supposed to go to Auburn University, but I changed my mind maybe a week or so after signing day. So I went to North Carolina State University, got a degree in sports management, became the defensive team captain of the Wolfpack, and I had two great stellar seasons in which allowed me to be a standout for the Wolfpack. From there, I had aspirations like, many, football players or athletes that you want to go to the highest level. But I wasn't able to go to the NFL. I had my chances, but it never worked out. But I was actually able to go to the CFL, where I played with the Saskatchewan Roughriders for a year. And so that was kind of my journey. I played professional football maybe between 4 and 5 years. Most people think it's about just playing football. There's a lot goes into it. You have to work out for teams. You get cut. It's the reality of the real world where football is a job. And so during around about 2014, 2015, I started getting more into fasting. Fasting not necessarily for diet, more for clarity, right? Usually if you look in the biblical text, when you talk about fasting, it's more of a clarity type thing. You're trying to, I'm trying to figure out my purpose. I'm in football, but I'm trying to transition, and I don't really know what I want to do because I've been playing sports for 20 years, and so it's just hard to turn that switch off. So I'm kind of going through this journey, and I start fasting, and through that fasting, I actually became vegan. Each year I would fast, I would take something away, and then I kind of got to something I knew of as vegan. I didn't actually know what vegan was at the time because I'm from Alabama, and you just don't run into many vegans in Alabama, and we eat pork and all those things. So it was a journey actually going through the vegan process because most people don't understand it. I didn't really understand it, so I was like a practicing vegan. And so, I was, talked about by my family. I was, all the things that go along with trying to be healthy and trying to do something different. And so now I've been a vegan maybe like 7 years now, this year. And my yoga journey really started in sports. So I kind of always knew about the practice of yoga. I actually really got into it when I became an instructor at the local recreational center. And so when I kind of got into that, I understood just more than just the physical aspect, but the mental aspect as well. Because I was just doing it because someone said, well, if you want to do this, if you want to actually play sports for a long time and you want longevity, you need to do yoga, right? And so for an athlete, anything, whether it's massages or whatever it may be, we're gonna kind of take that because 1 year, 2 year, 3 years, all that adds up when you're talking about what you can accumulate when you're playing sports. And so you see a lot of athletes take on yoga and some other things like ballet. But I was actually introduced to the other side of it once I became an instructor. And so in 2018, I ran for office. I won. And one of the first issues that I took up in 2019 was actually reversing the repeal on the ban of yoga in Alabama. And it was only, I didn't even know that this was even exist because, you do yoga in sports, universities, they do yoga in prison. So I would have never thought that yoga would be banned anywhere. But so happens is banned in Alabama and only in Alabama. And so I was actually at a high school and it was brought to my attention. And so from that point forward, I kind of, was an advocate for the bill. And I've pretty much been an advocate for the bill and pushing the bill since 2019. Right now in 2021, I got the bill through the House and the Senate committee, the Judiciary Committee. Now we're just waiting for it to be voted by the entire Senate body. But we do have a holdup because the rules chair, the guy who's over the rules committee, he's kind of like holding the bill. And so we only have about 3 sessions left before the sessions ends. So hopefully he puts it on the calendar. I think it'll pass. But I think this is like a tactic for him just to hold it up so it'll die. And I'll have to kind of do the whole process over again. And this will be my 4th year. If I have to do it again, it'll be my 4th year. So, I'm in it to actually, I understand how important it is. And so I'll continue to push the bill. And hopefully this year, but not this year, we'll get it eventually passed in Alabama.
Wow. There's a lot there.
There's so many things there, and I want to go back to a couple of things, but once we're on the yoga topic, let's roll with that, and then we'll go backwards a little bit. So what is the holdback? Like, what is the reason why illegal is a strong word, right? Like, it's illegal to steal. It's illegal to kill. It's illegal to run through a red light because these are the things that are going to hurt other people. What is holding people back from accepting yoga? Is it because they think it's religious, or what's the mindset there?
It's kind of shocking that it's like banned in anywhere.
Yeah.
I didn't even know that until this came up.
That's right. So in 93, you had the evangelical, like that whole Bible Belt, Bible State, conservative Alabama that was kind of pro-Christianity. And so the premises of the bill comes from that. They basically said yoga was a religion, is the practice of hypnosis. It makes you high. It is demonic. And so those are the kind of things that you're fighting in 93. So in 2019, essentially, it's the same thing, right? Where it's not everyone in Alabama. And I think a lot of times when we kind of look at media, it looks like everyone is against this bill except me, right? What it is everybody is for this bill except the very conservative groups like an Eagle Forum. And they're kind of like a lobbying group in Alabama. And they have a very big stronghold on, Republicans in the politics. And so they're the one that's fighting this bill, and they're fighting this bill from 93. So that whole ideology that happened in 93 around yoga being a religion is still kind of something they've been fighting for the last 28 years, was 28, 29 years, this has been banned. And so that's some of the same rhetoric that you'll hear in committee meeting. But usually stuff like this would make national or international, news. But now you see that, people are saying, a lady Becky down with Eagle Forum essentially said that yoga converts you into Hinduism, right? And so that doesn't make any sense. But in Alabama, a lot of times the person with the loudest voice or the biggest microphone, that's the kind of message that you get, right? And so you have me on one side talking about how it helps on the mental and the physical aspect as far as anxiety and stress and all those things. And they're literally just talking about it being a religion. And so that's kind of what I'm fighting here. I think it's really just a lot of people are miseducated. And when people are miseducated and they have a loud voice, then it's like, leading you to the slaughter, right? Leading you to the slaughter. And so we're just in that position in Alabama. And when you hear certain big topic words like a yoga, a Medicaid expansion, conservative groups fight it. And the thing about it is we all benefit from it. It's not a Republican or a Democratic thing, but it's just we're just wired in Alabama to think this way. And so that's kind of the premises and the background of the bill and why it was banned in the first place. Because essentially some superintendent and some people in education thought it was fitting at the time.
What would they say about a Canadian Jewish girl that teaches yoga in elementary schools? You don't have to answer that. But no, it's huge. And when we were talking about, how many football players do yoga, like I'm interested to know, like, is it's like this these closet football yogis who don't really talk about it out loud, or maybe they do and I'm not listening to that. But when it comes to the way that you can restore, rejuvenate the body, how you can protect yourself against injury, how you can recuperate from injury, like these are important things. And some people take yoga for spirituality reasons, not religious, but spirituality reasons. And some people take yoga just for physical, and because there is a calming energy that goes through it, because that's the way it's being led. So that is quite interesting. So would you say most football players do yoga or ballet?
I don't know about ballet. Ballet is more for like offensive linemen or running back. So if you kind of know the story of people like Bo Jackson and Herschel Walker, they did stuff like that as far as balance. But the University of Alabama with Nick Saban, they do yoga. I mean, at NC State, I did yoga. LeBron James accredited yoga to recovery. Tom Brady, Russell Wilson. So you have a lot of athletes, a lot of people who actually take on this yoga stretching. When I was in Canada playing the CFL, that's what we did on our off days. We did yoga, right? Because like you said, it rejuvenates the body. It helps restore the muscles. So I think this is a common practice. I don't think people talk about it because it's nothing to talk about, right? And so I think only in Alabama, when we're talking about K through 12 public schools, I think it's something actually to talk about. But I would say in general in Alabama, when I was talking to some of the local universities, they said that it's still kind of taboo, meaning like people do it, but they don't talk about it. We have yoga studios all over, but they don't actually talk about it in a way. They may call it other things so they can so people won't talk about it and won't kind of get on their nerves about it. But it's so integrated into Alabama, everywhere. I mean, they do yoga in churches, Methodist churches, Baptist churches. So it's not like it's just that taboo or you can't do it. This is just more of an argument of repealing an old law. I mean, I think that if it wasn't a law, it wouldn't really even be an issue. But I think this is kind of like, when you're trying to play to your base, you want to make sure that you keep in that conservative atmosphere in Alabama, because that plays to, that we have a GOP Republican supermajority, right, in Alabama. So
So
that,
if they let yoga, then what's next?
that's right.
It'll be a loss
We
of
already
control.
have
It's
the
not a yoga
marijuana
issue.
bill
It's a
coming
control
up.
issue.
That's right. That's right.
I mean, years ago, athletes used to look at yoga and ballet as something that they just wouldn't do. It wasn't for them. It wasn't manly. Like, it wasn't the manly sport. But I think that's definitely evolved over the years. And it's more of a training technique and strategy, like you said, for mindfulness and stress relief and recovery and helping to improve flexibility and get stronger as a whole. So I think the perspective on using yoga as part of your training regime and program is really become a lot more widespread, and it is starting at much younger ages now than it used to. And I think it's definitely clear and visible.
Yeah, I'll get calls from kids who are in high level hockey, and the kids like 7, 8, 9 years old, and the parents want them to have private one-on-one lessons and things like that. So it's definitely, I'm definitely hearing about it more. I want to roll back into the beginning of your story a little bit more. And when you found the vegan plant-based lifestyle, were you still playing in the CFL at that time, or was that when you had exited?
I wasn't quite vegan quite yet. So my last year playing was in 2015. I didn't eat pork and beef at that time, but I think I still ate chicken and seafoods, things of that nature. I think right after that, it was just like right after I kind of left the CFL, I actually went on a 21-day meat fast. And I was trying to eat meat, but it wasn't working for me. And I kept getting sick each time. I tried it like 3 times. I'm like, well, I'm not going to eat meat, because if it takes this much for my body to get acclimated to eat it, it must not be something I need. And so that's kind of how I got into not actually eating the meat part. I still didn't understand the vegan part, because that wasn't even a word, to me. Like, what is vegan? Maybe vegetarian. I knew that, or things of that nature. And so once I started to get into it and I started to learn about dairy and dairy alternatives, and I was like, well, essentially, if I just substitute some of this stuff, then I could be a vegan, because I don't like meat anyway. And so when you're talking about dairy and how it's bad for men, when you're talking about dealing with prostate and, just how is this bad for men overall, and how it's, essentially worse than meat, right? Because it's, it's processed and all those things. So I really, after that moment, I was like, well, I'll just go vegan. And so I was practicing vegan because, in Alabama, you go to a restaurant, you say vegan, they don't know. A lot of them may not know what vegan is. So it's like, oh, no, I can't have this feta that you put on my salad, or I can't have this. So it was actually a time where I had to educate everyone around me on what it is I'm asking for. So, whether I was in a restaurant, whether I say, yeah, man, I don't eat meat, and somebody brings me some macaroni and cheese, and it's not vegan. So it was a learning process. You have to learn to read the labels at the store, because it'll say like it's plant-based, and then you look on the back, and then it has like milk in it. So things like that, it really helped me understand from a standpoint of being vegan and what's it all about. And I can, people ask me all the time. I have a colleague right now, he's going through his vegan journey. He's a Republican. He loves steak, but he kind of went through this process because someone told him that it'll make him feel better. And so we have conversations about being vegan.
And did you have any physical changes, anything in your own health that changed when you went vegan, or were you kind of like in a top-notch physical state as it was?
Yeah, I'm pretty much top-notch shape pretty much my entire life, because I've played so many sports. I think the only thing that I think I really didn't like about being vegan is the weight that I lost, because I was already kind of slim anyway. I think I was like, maybe my playing weight was 200, but I was on an average 190. So I'm like 175. That's the only thing I didn't like about it, was the weight loss, but it's not necessarily a bad thing that you lose weight.
No. And so tell us, did any of your family members join you in the vegan journey? No.
No. That probably would never happen because I have a family just grew up off Sunday dinner cooking, and they like all the hog maws, the pig feet, they like all their food. And so a lot of people in my family live to kind of be older in age anyway. So they feel like if I can live to 85, 86, I'm okay with that. I'm not trying to live to be 99 years old. And so they're not willing to change. But on Sundays, I get the meal that they get, right? But I get it in a more of a vegan way. So if we eating collard greens and field peas and cornbread, I'm getting the vegan version of that. And so what it allows them to do is at least taste the food, saying, "No, this is not bad." If the collard greens run out, they have to get mine, right? So it introduces them to it. I don't think they're going to be committed to it, where they're going to actually say they're going to, take on a vegan lifestyle. But just the experience of knowing it's not that bad, I could eat this, or I won't eat meat so much, right? I could, take my time, not be, carnivore and eat vegetables and do it in a vegan way, or this vegan macaroni and cheese that my auntie makes. So I think it just allows them to understand, that you can be vegan. There are good options that taste just like comfort foods that you already eat. And so if anything else, is just educate them so they won't be naive. Because at first it was like, I cough. Oh, that's because you don't eat meat, right? Like silly stuff. Where you get your protein from? What is this? And so that friction just kind of, it lasted for a year. And then finally, I broke them down. And so once I broke them, they kind of embraced what I was doing, and I've been vegan ever since. So it's not a problem now.
Cool. Over the last 20 whatever years that you've been an athlete, you've accumulated several skills, because you mentioned that you were captain of the defensive football team. So I'm wondering what skills you learned, what leadership skills that you've been able to take as an athlete from your sports that you played, that you've been able to transfer over to now becoming a state representative and doing all the amazing things you're doing in your community.
Yeah, that's good because to be honest with you, if I kind of look at in my childhood, I always been a leader and people always wanted to follow me, but I didn't want to lead, right? I wanted to be the person that I just want to do Jeremy Gray. I don't want to do anyone else. And so I learned a hard lesson in college because I didn't actually want to be the team captain. I was voted by my peers. And I remember the day that, they said I was the team captain. I was like, no, I don't want to be team captain. I want to focus on me. I want to do my thing. But there were so many young people that kind of looked up to me. And it was it wasn't like the best because I wasn't used to being a leader, but it taught me a great lesson. And my coach, my defensive coach, he told me this before, my senior year. I was going to the draft. I had some pretty good stock. I was supposed to go like third, fourth round. And he said that depending on what we do this season and depending on how you lead the team, that's going to determine where you go in the draft, right? And he was right? Because I was good in school. I was good in football, but I wasn't actually be good at getting the morale up of the players and kind of being that leader. So I learned a hard lesson because a lot of times when scouts came around, they wanted to know what type of leader I was, right? And so that was one of the wake-up moments for me when it was like, you have to assume leadership, right? When it's your time, you have to be willing to do it. And so I kind of still went on, kind of being to myself and just kind of wanted to do Jeremy. And it was not until I kind of came back into the community in 2015 when I started doing things in the community as far as like after school programs. I started getting into leadership programs like 20 Under 40 with the Chamber of Commerce. And then I ran for elected office. Did I really understood the dynamic of leadership and how so many people are looking for hope and change, and they have to have someone to follow. And you have to have someone that's going to be at the front of the line, kind of navigating and helping you out. And so my putting my hat in for 2018 for the elected position was kind of like my triumphant story of, you know, what I should have did my senior year in college, now doing in 2018, running for elected office. And only because I felt like in Alabama, when we talk about young people in politics, it's not something that really happens in sports, most especially in your smaller areas. So I kind of wanted to bridge that gap and kind of knock down all those barriers for younger people to have representation in my area. And, you know, my whole process of trying to get the Curtis House started, I went through so many things around zoning and the planning commission and all these things I didn't know. And I was only trying to do something great for my community. And so I was like, if Jeremy Gray couldn't, a former athlete, a standout, or an overall great, you know, person as far as citizen, I'm like, if I can't get this accomplished, imagine someone who doesn't have the stardom that I have or the notoriety that I have. And so that immediately put me into place to want to run because I knew I could win. And I knew that I could actually bridge that gap and create something different and be that agent of change. So it was more for me just wanting to fill in the gap and showing people, young people especially, that you can do this. And then showing the older generation, you don't have to be 50 years old to run for office, right? You could be 30 years old or you could be younger. And, you know, you can get respect and you can get things done. And I've pretty much been a model that you can get in a seat, not know really anything about politics, but understand leadership in the community, and you can be effective. And so that's really helped me out a lot. I recently got into an executive MBA program at Auburn University, and my first class was a leadership class, leadership, ethics, and change. And I learned about emotional intelligence, right? And so how key that is and how your IQ doesn't matter, you know, that much. I mean, it's okay to be smart, but it's better to understand people, have empathy and all those things. So I would say right now, my leadership skills are at an all-time high. You know, more than I ever thought. You know, just being a kid who was an introvert, really didn't like to talk much. Now you can't really get me to shut up, right? And so that's kind of where I am with that journey of being a just a young kid who was scared to talk, that was good in sports, now to outspoken state representative that really leading a lot of great initiatives in Alabama. So that's, you know, I look at that sometimes and I can't believe it.
Well, congratulations to you for achieving all of that. And I want to talk about the Curtis House in a minute, but what I want to ask is, obviously you needed to be on this journey to get where you were now, but saying that you're learning about emotional intelligence and that you're learning about leadership now, do you think that you were given the opportunity to learn about leadership when you were asked to step up and lead a team, or was it kind of something that was inferred that you would have in you naturally? And would you have maybe been able to change that projection if you would have been taught some of these things? Or is it just like you needed to come out of your shell, you needed to grow up, you needed to mature, and this is where you're at now? Or a combination, maybe?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of all of it, because the whole part of me just being a natural born leader was always there, right? It was in sports, people followed me, and whether it was good things I was doing or bad things I was doing, I figured out that people would follow me. So it was something about that. But I think that I needed to fail to really understand that, right? Because especially young people, you know, when I was 17, 18, 16, 17, 18 years old, I was selfish, right? I just want to be the best Jeremy Gray I could be. I wasn't worried about like what everyone else was doing, because I was trying to worry about what I was doing. And that's not kind of like the right way to go about doing things. So I think that this experience would have changed my life if I would have learned it earlier. I probably been in the NFL 10, 12 years, because what you really don't understand is not about everybody's talented. Everybody, run fast, or everybody can catch and have these abilities. It's about the person who markets themselves really well and who knows how to communicate. And, people can cling on to and kind of say, this is a leader and somebody who wants to follow. You can see that with Tom Brady. He got drafted like in the 6th round, and now he's, and it was due to his hard work, dedication, and his leadership. Nothing about his skills. He's still not the best passer. He's still not the fastest. He may be like one of the smartest QBs, but if I would have kind of known that, and it's someone that would have instilled that into me early, I think that my projection for my career would have went further. But but you can't go back. So I'm still appreciative of where I am, and that's a life lesson.
Yep. Amazing. So you talked a little bit about the community center and some of the work that you're doing. Can you tell us about Curtis House and what it is and what you're doing there?
So one of the things that I noticed, and I've done it as well, when people in places like Alabama, especially like places where I'm from, where back in that time wasn't much here, we're typically wired to say, once you make it and get out, don't come back. Right? Do not come back here. This is nothing but trouble here. Is you won't be anyone here, right? The best thing that you could probably get out of Opelika is a factory job, right? That's probably the best job you'll get in the area, or maybe you can work for the local university, whatever it may be. So that was one of the reasons I left to go to North Carolina State University in the first place, because it was more of a city that I think that I could get accustomed to, where they had 1 million population, different food, different, races, religion. No one really cared about what you were doing. It was inclusive. And so when I came back, one of the things that I wanted to do was bridge the gap, where you had someone who was a product of a village, who, people mold and raise, and who went off and then was able to come back to actually bridge that gap and say, there are things that we can do in Opelika, Alabama, to bring and move kids forward in a way that they don't have to leave, right? We can create jobs here. We can do things here. And so the Curtis House was my way of basically saying I was appreciative for all the people in the community who helped me out along my journey. And so I took my great-grandfather's land, which his name is Lottie B. Curtis, and we named it the Curtis House, and it's a resource hub for an impoverished community. And it's the community in which I rode bikes and ran up and down the road and, got a little trouble. Though it's in that area. And so we have a community garden, we have a fire pit, chicken coop, a big pavilion where we do yoga and arts and crafts. And we're at the finishing stages of the house. And so this is going to be a resource hub, a resource center, a one-stop shop for the community, and it's really geared towards making people productive and self-sustainable. So it's not meant to hinder you, it's meant to help you, and it's a safe haven in the community.
That's so amazing and wonderful, and to bridge that gap and bring that vision and watch it happen must be, I mean, like your family must be really proud. Are they supporting you on this project?
Yeah, so everything that I'm, how, the toughest job of a visionary is like you have the vision, but you have to manifest it, right? And so it doesn't matter, because I think some of the stuff I try to do is so far out and you can't see it, right? At first, they was like, well, that's a good idea, but how you going to get it done, right? And so I don't think they were on board at first, but once I started moving it and they started kind of seeing the change, and I was able to, get partnerships and things of that nature, now they're like all on board, right? And that's kind of thing about family, right? People are not always going to believe in your dream, but I believe in myself, right? And so when you believe in yourself, you're just able to get things done. You attract the right people. And it has been a journey. I mean, we literally leveled the whole 1.4 acres of land flats, right? We took down everything, the house, the old barn that was behind the house, everything, and I literally had to build it up from the ground up, right? And so I know nothing about building the house. I know nothing about none of those things, and so just that learning experience, that learning curve that I got actually going through the process with the zoning, with all of those things, I think that just made me a better person. But I would say this is probably the hardest thing that I ever done in my life, right? And so I've run for elected office, played football, and all those things. But this is essentially the hardest thing that I've ever done. And for it to come to almost fruition and be at the end stage, sometimes I look back and I'm like, I don't know how in the world I pulled this off, but I did. And so, it's not all credit to me. A lot of great people helped me, but I think this is probably, if I had to think about one thing that would define me and that I could actually say, I'm proud of and, I can take to my grave, would be this community center.
Well, we have no limits, and we're all able and capable of doing extraordinary things, and you certainly are doing some extraordinary things in your community, and it's just amazing for you to be able to share that with us and our listeners. If people listening wanted to reach out and connect with you or learn more about the Curtis House and what you're doing, where would you like them to go?
You can go to thecurtishouse.org. That's our website. And then at the Curtis House Facebook page, Instagram page, Twitter page is all the same, at the Curtis House.
Awesome. So we're going to link to that in our show notes at Plant Trainers. And you still have me down to come and read my book to you virtually in the summer, right?
Uh-huh.
Good.
So as soon as we get the 265-inch TVs put up outside, and we get the pavilion connected, I'll have a date for you, and we'll actually be able to do that.
Awesome. That's amazing. Super exciting. I'm excited.
Yeah,
good.
Amazing.
Is there anything else that you want people to know? Any last words? Any last thoughts?
Not really. I'll just tell people to believe in yourself. I mean, that's if I had a more of this story of my life, failures are going to occur, right? And, I say that, man, I spent years and years and years perfecting my craft to be a professional athlete, right? And sometimes your dreams, the goals you have is just a vehicle to something greater. And so I believe that I'm in a greater place. I'm not making $20 million, but, you can have a $20 million experience on people, right? Lives, right? You can create millionaires, you can create productive people, and you may even be able to create jobs. So if I'm looking at this, if I couldn't play sports, if I could do anything else, I think it would be this, right? Because this is going to be more gratifying in the end. And so I would just say that my journey was one of those things that connected. Essentially I went through some things where, when you don't make it in football and you've been doing something forever, you get depressed, right? And so I felt like this was a much needed journey, because there's a lot of athletes just like me who aspire as a child to kind of be, like a Deion Sanders or a Barry Sanders or all these different people. But it's okay being Jeremy Gray, right? It's okay of using your platform, getting a degree, and going to the highest level you can go. And then from that, transition and be productive in life. And so, we want to win in sports, but I want to win in life. And so I would just encourage people to just never give up. And you never fail till you actually quit, right? And so you never know what the doors, what lies behind the door, and so you just have to keep pushing. And so that would be my message to the listeners.
Great message, and thank you again for making such an impact on those around you. We really appreciate you being here and giving us your time on the Plant Trainers podcast.
No problem. Thank you for having me.